I am Councilwoman Darma Diaz, Chair of the committee. My pronouns are her and she. This is my first hearing as a committee chair. And first want to say that it's an honor and a privilege to serve my constituents in the City Council and to be able to address solutions for serving our most vulnerable New Yorkers. I look forward to collaborating with the committee members, my colleagues and council staff to continue the committee's work related to advancing the economic mobility, social inclusion, leadership, and civic participation of New York City's women, girls, trans, and non-binary, non-conforming individuals. I also want to thank everyone who is here to testify today. Women NYC, which is a part of NYC Economic Development Corporation, EDC, is a website designed to empower and inspire women by connecting them to services, programs, and resources. Launched in 2018 by our First Lady, McCray, and former Deputy Mayor Alicia Glenn, Women.NYC is one-stop shop for women seeking information, resources, and tools on everything from finding a job, starting and running a business, and getting legal help, to assisting in health resources and money management. And we are here today because we need to begin discussing access and resources for our communities, perhaps more than ever. As of January 2020, more than 40% of the jobs lost by women earlier in the pandemic had not returned, while data from February 2021 indicates that 40% of women aged 20 or older who have become unemployed due to COVID-19 have been out of work for more than 6 months. The city needs to address these issues and ensure that it's doing its best to support women and work economic equity.
Good morning to Chair Diaz and the members of the committee. My name is Faye Penn. I'm the Executive Director of Women.NYC. Women.NYC would not only be a website that could help women advance in their businesses and careers, it would also be a launch pad for future initiatives. The website was launched in May 2018 and proved to be only the beginning of a much needed enterprise. We're here for all women of New York City, and we can't serve everybody by ourselves, but what we can do is amplify existing work of agencies and other agencies in other parts of the city government. So,
how do we measure your success rate?
Well, I think that there's a couple of ways to do that. I think that one of the ways that we can do that is look at the programs that we run ourselves. And I think, you know, I can talk a little bit about our success rate with the salary negotiation workshops.
Hi, can you all hear me? Yes, I'm driving, so apologies for the lack of video. I'm not sure I really have a question. I just want to say, Councilmember Diaz, this transition is going to be seamless. I'm hearing your questions and your perspective. You're thinking about things that would not have been in my world to even think about. And you're asking really the most important questions. So in a way, I wanted to note that and double down on looking forward to the answers to the questions that Councilmember Diaz is asking.
I think it's very early, but boy, is it good news to have an administration that's taking gender seriously and women in the workforce and childcare. I think that we are very open to seeing how we can collaborate, and but I think it's just very early in these efforts to understand where it's going and what those opportunities look like.
So much. Good morning. I just wanted to lend my voice of support to women and gender equity in my district. I live in Harlem, and I participate in many advocacy efforts and organizing efforts to grow opportunities for women, especially women in business and women in small business. And that includes vendors, that includes entrepreneurs. A lot of women, especially during this pandemic, have found it hard to provide for their families. These are not just single women that, you know, in our community, everybody has to work. the household has to work, and we really have to empower women in a way that they can get an opportunity to open businesses, to grow businesses. And the sister that was speaking before, I totally agree with, the opportunities being made for mothers, women who have children. Yes.
Let's not talk about it, let's be about it.
Yes.
If you're really with us and you understand your plight as men, I'm going to challenge you. The next time you're looking for an architect, here we have a sister in the struggle who's saying, hey, I'm equipped. Yes. I know someone that's equipped. And that's what it has to be about. I'm not going to bash men because it's not, who I am, but I am going to use the word challenge to ask you to bring us to the table. There's been a lot of conversation on how we should be working together. Well, let's make it happen. What I like to do is, if it's okay, I like to forward the questions that I did not ask. I thought that they were going to be somewhat challenging for them. A lot of it's data driven and specifics to detail that I was made to feel they were not going to be able to answer the questions. But I will give categories to where we were going to emphasize on was have more questions in the area of engagement, advertisement, which obviously I feel is lacking, the resources, employment, more of the target database, which I asked for, small business and entrepreneurships, workshops, and then a program, She Built NYC. So once I receive the answers to these questions, I will share with my audience today, and I'll make it public on my website. And thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Councilmember Carlina Rivera, Chair of the Committee on Hospital. Many of us have stories, and even more of us now have stories because of COVID-19. Stories of loved ones being deprived of care because they cannot adequately express their concerns in their preferred language. Stories of being expected to be our family's interpreters, or stories of individuals faced with a medical community that has a general lack of understanding of stigma and nuance within our cultures and identities. So I want to share a personal story with this struggle that clearly shows how the city's failures to fund community organizations, conduct door-to-door outreach, and offer reasonable accommodations at hospitals as well as testing and vaccine sites are directly affecting New Yorkers during this pandemic. And obviously, this isn't just a vaccine-related issue. We're here today to examine how all care in hospitals is made worse without effective language access and cultural humility. New York City is unlike any other, with incredible diversity. New Yorkers speak over 200 languages. In addition, about a quarter of New Yorkers identify as a limited English proficient, or LEP. And about half of all immigrant New Yorkers identify as LEP. We know that the inability to communicate proficiently in English can pose incredible barriers for LEP individuals when it comes to accessing healthcare. For example, we know that patients who identify as LEP experience adverse health outcomes at markedly higher rates than English speakers. They experience high rates of medical errors, have worse clinical outcomes, and receive lower quality of care by other metrics than their English-speaking counterparts. We as a city and as a country must learn from this pandemic and prioritize language access and equitable healthcare across racial and socioeconomic lines.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Rivera. I am Matilde Roman, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at New York City Health and Hospitals. An estimated 30% of patients served are limited English proficient. And more than 60% of patients self-identify as either Black, African American, Hispanic, Latinx, or Asian. That is why Health and Hospitals provides free language services 24 hours a day.
How long a patient typically waits?
Our average, it's on demand. Our average connect time is 20 seconds or less, on average.
Has the pandemic increased those wait times?
No, our systems have been stable. We have actually ramped up compliance and our monitoring measures during COVID-19 to really ensure that we maintain standard quality services throughout the pandemic.
My name is Hallie Yee, and I'm policy coordinator at the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families. Asian Americans in New York have the highest rate of linguistic isolation of any group at 42%, and half of most spoken non-English languages in the city are Asian American. COVID-19 has highlighted the barriers the most marginalized APAs face to language access. The mere availability of languages is not enough without effective outreach and implementation of language access policies. It prevents vital communication about any decisions around the pandemic from reaching our communities. We've been told by numerous community members and organizations that there is so much confusion around language rights that exist at COVID testing and vaccination sites. It took us nearly 3 months to get a single slide on language rights at testing sites from health and hospitals, and are still waiting on those for vaccines.
Hi, my name is Manyak Yu, Executive Vice President at the Academy of Medical and Public Health Services in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. We are a public health organization that works to bridge the health equity gap for Latino and Asian populations through health and social services. And here's what we see the language access gaps in our public hospitals looking like. In March of last year, a community member tried to visit H&H to get seen because she was experiencing COVID-19 symptoms. She had never learned to read or write in her home country. She encountered an English-speaking receptionist and was told she should not be there. She was not offered translation and left. Only when she approached AMPS was she later connected to a physician who diagnosed her with COVID-19 and diabetes, but does not want to return to the hospital due to her experience there. And despite the fact that Sunset Park has been named a priority neighborhood in the city's Vaccine for All effort, vaccine uptake remains at only 4%. Many of our immigrant community members struggle to navigate the city's vaccination schedule system with limited English and technological proficiency. When I visited the vaccination sites last week, here's what I saw. None of the signage nor registration forms is translated into other languages. There are no staff members on site speaking other languages. Instead, we were told to tell community members to bring their own translators if they can. But we are not funded to do this work through H&H and are asked to subcontract with a few funded organizations by Test and Trace, which only include 2 APA serving organizations to my knowledge, who do not have an obligation to partner with any other groups. And CBOs need to be funded to do this work because we are needed to do this work in a culturally and linguistically sensitive ways. This is not health equity. This is a perpetuated structural healthcare racism, and our city and state needs to do better to center voices of color and those who are most marginalized.
Anthony Feliciano, I'm the director of the Commission on the Public Health System. I'm also part of the People of Color Health Justice Campaign. I want to just thank Councilwoman Rivera and other council members here for the opportunity again to be here to speak about inequities that we're still seeing in COVID response, but also to thank the Councilwoman Rivera for being with us over the weekend on the exact same issues that we are just, all of us are talking about. I'm not going to reiterate every single thing. Our partners have done it here, and we are honored to be working with them on many levels. But I would say this, a short story. CPHS and myself, more than 15 years ago, fought issues around language access when there was no executive order, when weren't real regulations around it. And I'll give you an example. We had a woman who had a son that had asthma. She was given a prescription that said for his steroids once a day. They had a janitor in the hospital translate for her the drug, and she gave the child 11 pills. Why? Because once a day, when you read it, it's once in Spanish. That was a tragedy more than ever before, and we fought from that a lot of language access laws. I say this right now because it is insurmountable to ask a security guard or anyone who doesn't understand terminology and all to be interpreting to someone at a site.
But I think New York City's healthcare system really fell short for non-English speakers during COVID-19. And we have solutions on how to fix it. So we are the most linguistically diverse city in the world. And I truly believe that our hospital services and public health outreach should reflect that. So I want to thank everyone for their testimony and how we can take some of these concrete solutions and implement them immediately. And of course, again, to everyone for being here and for testifying.
Good afternoon. I'm Councilmember Mark Jones, Chair of the Committee on Small Business, and I'd like to welcome you to our virtual hearing today on 2 bills. intros 2233 and 2234 that will dramatically improve the relationship between small business owners and our city government. For too long, small businesses and our city agencies have had an antagonistic relationship. Small businesses view our local government as a hindrance to their success and the enemy. According to a 2016 report by the city controller, there are 6,000 rules and regulations, 250 business-related licenses and permits, and 15 separate agencies that govern small businesses. As the report notes, the alphabet soup of agencies and regulations can leave even the most knowledgeable and sophisticated business owner frustrated. The controller report found that nearly half of all business owners surveyed did not feel like they had been treated fairly by city inspectors, and more than 55% said agency inspectors had failed to adequately communicate expectations and requirements. Because of the pandemic, and through no fault of their own, small businesses have tragically been closing en masse. According to a recent report by the Hospitality Alliance, for example, over 90% of surveyed restaurants, bars, and nightlife establishments were unable to pay their December rent. Small businesses are experiencing drastic declines in revenue and must decide whether they can reopen or remain open and continue employing their staff during these challenging times. It is an absolute shame that during this period, any business would receive a fine from a city agency for breaking an insignificant regulation. We must ensure that during the remainder of this pandemic, our city agencies forge a strong relationship with our small businesses. City agencies should work with businesses to correct potential violations instead of issuing burdensome fines that small businesses can't afford. It would also allow a cure period for many first violations, or would eliminate the civil penalties and require a warning for first violations. As the chair of this committee, it has been my priority to make New York City a friendlier environment for small business to start, succeed, grow, and expand. The purpose of today's hearing is to hear from the stakeholders about these bills and what we can do to remove unnecessary government burdens and create a more business-friendly environment that allows our small businesses to survive this crisis as they try to rebuild so they can thrive in the future.
My name is Michael Brady. I'm the CEO of the 3rd Avenue Business Improvement District in Brooklyn Boulevard Commercial Corridor, located in the South Bronx. Collectively, these organizations represent roughly 1,000 South Bronx, largely immigrant-owned mom-and-pop businesses. I am here today to lend our organization support of Intro 2233 and 2234 as part of what I hope will be followed by a series of common sense policies and rollbacks which genuinely prioritize small businesses and local economies and attempt to counter a decade of punitive measures that have been placed on small and micro business owners. I do have to say I'm a bit shocked at the lack of attendance by other council members after the last stated where so many members of the Progressive Caucus said that during the March stated they were going to get serious about small business, but c'est la vie. We see how serious they are.
Good afternoon, members of the New York City Council. My name is David Estrada. I'm testifying today on behalf of the New York City Bid Association. I'm also executive director of the Sunset Park Brooklyn 5th Avenue bid. One key point of it includes the review of outdated and overly burdensome city rules and laws. So we're very, very glad to see the two bills being considered today, 2233 and 2234, which will make some strides in reducing fine severity, lengthening cure periods, and hopefully putting our city on a path toward a less punitive small business policy. If the success of open restaurants and open streets and open storefronts programs have taught us anything, it's that the city can act quickly to allow small business to operate without unnecessary bureaucracy. Simple forms to fill out, mostly easy to understand rules and warnings before fines are issued should be all within the new formula for the city's small business policy moving forward.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Riley with the New York State Restaurant Association. And now, a whole year into the COVID pandemic, our industry has been disproportionately damaged in New York City. The hardships that are experienced by the restaurant industry, specifically mandated closure and rigid limitations on business operations, have led to losses in jobs, income, and entire businesses. Even today, indoor dining has only been back for a little over 2 weeks, and we're still operating at a mere 35% capacity, which is compared to 50% in the rest of the state, and beholden to a curfew. Costs incurred by restaurant operators have been immense, and in many cases, operators are finding themselves in debt, unable to pay rent, unable to retain or rehire the staff they had pre-pandemic, and really struggling to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I'm grateful to you, and I'm truly a believer that this is the beginning to a great future, provided that we have the commitment and the wherewithal to continue to look at this do a deep dive that is necessary. So thank you again. This will conclude today's hearing. God bless you.
Good morning and welcome to today's hearing of the Committee on Finance on the fiscal 2022 preliminary budget. I am Councilmember Daniel Drum and I'm the chair of the committee. We are joined by the Subcommittee on the Capital Budget, chaired by Councilmember Helen Rosenthal, and by the Committee on Contracts, chaired by Councilmember Ben Kalos. We will hear from the Office of Management and Budget, the Controller, the Independent Budget Office, and the public. The fiscal 2022 preliminary budget totals $92.3 billion. The financial plan is conservative given the uncertainty about the length and depth of the pandemic-induced recession. Although the city's financial position isn't as dire as projected last June, there remain several concerning risks and unknowns that will impact the fiscal 22 preliminary budget. First is the uncertainty of federal stimulus funding. As the speaker noted, there is reason to be hopeful that $5.6 billion could come to the city, but we cannot count our chickens before they hatch.
My name is MJ Okuma with the Human Services Council. Last year, I testified at this person in hearing, and a lot has changed since then. Mistakes were made by city government when they had to make life and death decisions about what to prioritize in the face of COVID-19. The fiscal year 22 budget is a chance to address those mistakes. The human services sector has lost 44,000 jobs since this time last year. That's a net loss. City contracted human services workers, the majority of whom are women of color, were abandoned by the city. They were not provided PPE. They were not given a COLA in the fiscal year 21 budget. And their jobs were not protected while New York City and New York State withheld funding for human services. The city cannot call human services workers essential while refusing to pay them fairly and not fighting for their jobs to be preserved. The city cannot praise the work of human services nonprofits while balancing the budget on their back and retroactively calling back indirect funding.
I'm Jelson Fernandez. I'm a taxi driver and owner of a yellow taxi. I'm with the New York Taxi Workers Alliance with Ms. Bhairavi Desai as our leader. We are just asking for debt forgiveness for us owner drivers so that all our loans come down to $125,000 with a monthly of $757. This proposal was prepared by Ms. Bhairavi Desai. You can get it to the table and she can discuss more. So that way it becomes practical for the city and also for all of our drivers. She has a good proposal so that way even the city doesn't lose. But we owner drivers can get back on our feet and the yellow taxi industry is back to normal. So that's all I'm asking. Thank you.
My name is Mohammed Haq. I'm taxi driver and medallion owner, driving since 2007. We have a request, we have a proposal already submitted to the controller office or the mayor's office. The loan restart about $125,000. Then we can try to survive, and we expect you guys help us. We work in the city, we pay the tax in the city, so we are begging, we are crying. Please help the driver. We want to serve the community back again. Thanks.
My name is Mohamedou Aliyu. I'm a New York City Yellow Cab driver and a member of New York Taxi Worker Alliance. I believe by now everyone knows what really happened to us, and then I really don't want to go back to it because everyone knows our story. The question is the relief. When is it coming? It will be waste of my life, my 4 kids, myself. I've been on this thing for 22 years. It's just going to be horrible. I cannot imagine us not getting help with this stimulus because this is the last thing the mayor said he's been waiting for. Everyone is on board to help us, except the mayor, because he said there is no money. I believe now the money is coming. We're begging City Hall and the mayor office, please help us, give us our life back so we can be part of this great city as we always do.
My name is Jane Selden, and I'm here on behalf of 350 NYC, a grassroots environmental group focusing on New York City climate issues. We strongly support the coalition's call for including $13 million for composting in the 2002 budget. A budget allocation of $13 million will divert tons of organic matter from waste facilities by increasing neighborhood organic drop-off and processing sites, supporting school composting, and establishing recycling programs in municipal buildings. And importantly, at a time of soaring unemployment, especially in low-income communities, these programs will create good green jobs.
I'm Cristobal Gutierrez from Staff Attorney. We strongly urge the council to demonstrate its commitment to low-wage worker, immigrants, and essential workers and stabilize this critical funding at the baseline of $7.5 million for the low-wage worker initiative.
My name is Veronica Wong. Every year, we serve over 40,000 New Yorkers with programming that ranges from early childhood education to exercise classes for our elders. University Settlement echoes other human services organizations and nonprofits to call on the city to fully honor the indirect cost rate funding initiative for fiscal year 2021 and going forward. We are currently working out our budget, and without this funding, we could be forced to make significant reductions to our programming. We risk losing $875,000, which is the equivalent of nearly 240,000 meals for older people, or providing 875 tenants with rental arrears.
My name is Chicago Crosby. I'm a canner. That means I collect and redeem bottles and cans to earn income. I'm also the co-chair of the board of directors of Sure We Can, New York City's only nonprofit organization dedicated to serving the canning community. In 2020, we distributed over 100,000 face masks in Bushwick, the Bed-Stuy, and Williamsburg areas, and diverted more than 10 million bottles and cans from the waste stream that otherwise would have ended up on our streets, in our landfills, or in our ocean. At our center, where we have worked for over a decade to build trust, community, and the capacity to serve, we face eviction if we cannot purchase our lot. As a small organization built from the ground up by canners determined to transform their situation, we don't have resources or connections to purchase the lot outright. So we are asking the city for help.
Hello, my name is Eileen Vicencio. I'm a resident of Astoria, Queens, and a member of New York City DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. I am here today to testify that the preliminary budget falls seriously short of my needs, the needs of my loved ones, my community, and my city. Instead of adding cops to subways, we should be investing in mental health services that address the roots of this unfortunate violence. Instead of hiring more SSAs, we should be investing in our children's futures by providing them with the internet access that they need and the tech necessary for them to continue their education. The city needs to be focused on its people. The city needs to invest in its people. That is, it needs to be invest in its city workers, it needs to invest in its students, it needs to invest in its parents and our communities.
And I want to thank everybody, and I look forward to continuing the work as we move down. I want to thank also my co-chair, Helen Rosenthal. I look forward to continuing to work with you. And we will see you all at the next budget hearing. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Good morning. I'm Inez Barron, Chair of the Committee on Higher Education,
and I would like to welcome you all to our hearing on the fiscal 2022 preliminary budget, the fiscal 2021 preliminary mayor's management report, the fiscal 2021 through 2025 preliminary capital commitment plan, and the 10-year capital strategy for the City University of New York. In all of these issues, my concern is that the committee wants to see what will come down from the state in the enacted budget. CUNY requested that the base aid remain intact from last year, but didn't give a request for any increases from the state. Why? The Bible says you have not because you ask not. This matter is most distressing as any tuition increases this fall would have a compounding impact on our students with limited financial means of employment. And it is so difficult to attain as the industries are bottoming out, where students might have easily worked like restaurants. I want to know what the conversation with the administration has been to mitigate this potential increase. The council's approach to its preliminary budget hearing is to ensure that the city's budget is fair, transparent, and accountable to all New Yorkers. While efficiency and performance have always been priorities of this body, but particularly about Hunter College High School, they get $19.8 million. They have an abysmal 2% Black students, I believe it is, and 6% low-income students. That's unacceptable. What is going to be, it's already March and they haven't said what their plan is for admission. So that adds to the anxiety of students who want to avail themselves of getting into Hunter College High School. We will also be taking a closer look at how CUNY organizes its approximately $629.7 billion capital commitment plan.
I will start by saying I do think on the city budget that it is unconscionable that the city budget cuts funding designated for CUNY by $40 million while increasing funding for the NYPD by almost $200 million. That's having our priorities backwards. So I will fight hard to make sure we make that right, restore not just the ASAP 10 million, but the other 30 million that, that is New York City that the mayor proposes to cut from CUNY, while increasing funding for policing by nearly $200 million. So I will be fighting there.
And mostly more systemic to me and undergirding that, who makes the decision? Who determines? No one has been able to definitively say that. And it's been a question that's been asked for more than a year. So do you have the answer?
The president of Hunter College is the one who makes the decision and in consultation with the chancellor.
The union is calling for a fundamentally different approach from the one you heard from CUNY. We are calling on you not just to maintain the status quo or return CUNY to, quote, pre-pandemic normal, but we are calling on you, and I heard this from some of you, to recognize that this is the year in which the working people of New York, the people of color of New York, the immigrants of New York need CUNY more than ever. And therefore, this is the year in which New York must invest in CUNY and invest its way out of this crisis. We should take a look at the report that recently came out for the Center for an Urban Future, and they showed really shocking racial and ethnic disparities in higher education attainment. Just as one snippet, 20% of Latinx New Yorkers, 27% of Black New Yorkers, 45% of Asian New Yorkers hold a bachelor's degree, compared to 64% of white New Yorkers.
And what was so stunning to me was one of the things when Chair Barron asked the very good question about not only funding of ASAP, but what does it mean for the quality of ASAP? Matt Sapienza said, I believe it's still good. I believe it's still good. I believe the quality is still up to snuff. Well, it simply isn't. And we know that. How are you going to work with students on mental health issues by bringing in part-time temp workers that are running into an office and running out, not knowing anything about CUNY necessarily, anything about the student body?
With that, we are concluded, and this hearing is adjourned, and I'm going to use my shake away, knowing that my mute is on this time. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I'm Councilmember Francisco Moya. I'm chair of the Subcommittee on Zoning and Franchises. Today, we will vote on items heard by the subcommittee at our meetings of January 26th and February 23rd, including pre-considered LUs 718 and 719 for the 1620 Cortel U Road rezoning in Brooklyn, pre-considered LUs 735 and 736 for the 9132 63rd Drive rezoning in Queens, and pre-considered LU 737 for the 245-01 Jamaica Avenue rezoning in Queens. I also note that the pre-considered LU 733, 734 on today's agenda for the 737 4th Avenue rezoning, and 738, 739, and 740 for the Arvern East proposal are being laid over. We will also hold public hearings on the 1099 Webster Avenue rezoning relating to property located in the Bronx, and the 50-25 Barnett Avenue rezoning related to property located in Queens.
I want to thank Chair Moya for the opportunity to speak today, to express my support for this proposal rezoning.
I will be speaking briefly in favor of land use application number 210103 ZMX 1099 Webster Avenue. We are recognizing formerly homeless families that really need truly permanent affordable housing. I'm very proud to work with this applicant who came to me over a year ago with the idea of transforming this area into a more residential community.
We will now hear from the first panel.
I do not agree with this proposal at all. You are blocking Sunnyside in. You are just overstuffing us. You are infringing on an infrastructure in this particular area in Sunnyside, Woodside, that's already strained to the hilt. We don't have enough buses, transportation. We don't have subway service that's reliable. We don't have parking. We don't have streets that you can get up and down without having to wait for hours on end. We also have a situation where Sunnyside has been built in to the point that our air is now being affected because of the stagnation. We no longer get that nice breeze coming in off the river.
I've been there with the tenants. The tenants do not want this. They're these deplorable conditions, and they're asking that we go against it. And this has been proven. Phipps was just rated the 11th worst landlord in New York City. This is chasing out the small business. We're trying to recover from this COVID pandemic.
Good morning. My name is Mark Espinoza, and I'm a member of 32BJ. I would like to thank the chairs, members of the committee, and local council member Jimmy Van Bramer for holding this hearing today. I'm here on behalf of 85,000 building service workers 32BJ represents in New York City, and to express our support for this rezoning. This new development will bring new good jobs and permanently affordable housing to Queens in a time we need it most. Providing apartments at a range of prices for low-income and working-class families as we move forward from this pandemic and economic crisis is imperative to rebuilding New York City.
Don't expect people to have the horrible quality of life living on top of the Long Island Railroad. It's just not fair. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so hello, council members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am speaking in opposition of the Barnett Avenue project. My testimony is limited to 2 minutes, so I'm happy to provide more in-depth written testimony as previously done with the Queensborough President and the City Planning Commission.
My name is Deborah Farley. I've been living in Sunnyside, Queens for nearly 70 years, and I am strongly opposed to the rezoning of Barnett. This neighborhood is very well populated, becoming overpopulated.
And I really think that the major points have been covered by all of the other speakers who are against. I am against it. My husband is against it. We've lived in the gardens for 35 plus years. And all I would like to ask you, to urge you, is to please listen to the people on the ground, the people who are affected by what's going to happen. the tenants of Phipps, the neighborhood, the community. We are all, or well, the majority of us are against it.
There being no members of the public who wish to testify, the public hearing is now closed and this item is laid over. This concludes today's business. This meeting is hereby adjourned.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Diana Ayala, and welcome to the fiscal 2022 preliminary budget hearing for the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, known as DCWP. I am the new chair, as you know, of this committee, and this morning we will be reviewing the department's fiscal 2022 preliminary plan. Funding for the agency is primarily allocated to resolve consumer and worker complaints, issue numerous licenses, educate and protect consumers, and ensure that the businesses comply with local and state laws. At today's hearing, we will examine the components of DCWP's budget with a particular focus on the department's savings program, budgeted headcount, and funding for the Office of Financial Empowerment. We would like to hear about the impact the pandemic has had on the agency's operation and status updates on recent legislation that affects the department, most notably the expansion of the availability of street vendor permits. Specifically, I would like to get an update on how you plan to implement the expansion of the street vendor program and the additional resources that will be required. Lastly, we would like to examine DCWP's reporting in the preliminary mayor's management report to gain a better perspective on how well aligned its budget is with its performance.
Remember, I talked to you a few weeks ago about vending in Flushing downtown. I want to ask you, since then, have the agency done anything to improve the unlicensed vending problem in downtown Flushing?
Yes, of course, I remember us speaking about this issue in Flushing. We have gone to Flushing. We went shortly after that, I believe maybe a few days or a week after we spoke, and we brought our inspectors to do both, talk to vendors about street vending rules and regulations, but also about social distance guidelines, right? I know that you are very concerned about the rising numbers of COVID-19 in Flushing.
We need to see some results. I walk on the streets and people complain to me every day. Say, Peter Koo, what happened to you? You didn't do anything on the sidewalk congestions. This is over a year already I've been campaigning. So even with the new office set up, how many agents you want to hire? You will hire?
So right now, I think I mentioned this. We have 4 dedicated inspectors since February, and we have another 4 that will be added to that.
Is there one specific complaint more than any other of the complaints?
The price gouging was about excessive pricing on face masks, on hand sanitizers, alcohol, rubbing alcohol, those types of products.
My name is Karina Kaufman Gutierrez, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Street Vendor Project. Today, we are requesting support from New York City Council to further develop and expand the essential multilingual services we offer to street vendors, who are our city's smallest businesses, who are providing fresh, affordable food all across the 5 boroughs and really looking out for the community as well as the eyes on the street. We are hoping that the outreach and education specialists that we would be able to hire with extended funding will be informing vendors about 2 of our different critical resources. One is a small business consultation program, and another is an environmental justice initiative.
Hi, good afternoon, members of the New York City Council. My name is Jennifer Tausig, and I'm testifying today as the co-chair of the New York City Bid Association. As our city begins to recover from this awful pandemic, we must support our small businesses and help them regain their footing. We hope that DCWP will work with the administration and City Council to continually look at outdated or unnecessary fines and violations that only hurt our business owners who need a helping hand right now. DCWP will also be charged with rulemaking and implementation of the new vending legislation, which will add over 4,000 new vendors to our city's streets. Our brick and mortar small businesses are struggling to survive now more than ever, and they are extremely concerned about both the lack of any enforcement on existing vendors and the impact of new licenses being issued.
Hello, my name is Justina Ramlakan and I am a political organizer with SEIU Local 32BJ. I would like to testify in support of providing the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection with greater funding. We need more investigators to enforce the various worker protection laws. We need more appropriate resources and funding to make the process faster and make workers whole sooner. This is especially concerning given the critical importance of paid sick leave amidst the ongoing pandemic.
My name is Autumn Weintraub, and I am the director of SEIU Local 32BJ's Fast Food Worker Organizing Program. I'm here to testify in support of providing the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection with additional funding. More recently, the council passed groundbreaking just cause legislation, making New York the first city in the country to protect fast food workers against unfair firings and reductions in hours. These protections are a huge shift in industry where fully 2/3 of workers report having an employer fire them without even providing a reason. Taken together, these laws have the incredible potential to transform fast food jobs into careers that can sustain New York families and communities by providing stable full-time hours, as well as job security.
So Luisa's testimony. So my name is Luisa Mendez and I work for Chipotle Mexican Grill at their Union Square South location in Manhattan. I'm here to ask the City Council to give more money to the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. In October 2019, I called out of work several times to care for my pregnant daughter, my father who was hospitalized with a heart condition, and myself, as I felt sick as well. My GM told me I was calling out sick too much and then fired me. Chipotle did not rehire me until February 2020 after DCWP investigated them for breaking New York's paid sick leave law. I'm grateful to the DCWP for the work they did, but the process still took 5 months, during which I had no income. Although Chipotle had promised to provide 2 weeks of paid sick leave for workers out due to coronavirus, when I asked about that, my GM just told me to take unpaid vacation time. It ultimately took me several attempts of reaching out to different Chipotle managers and hotlines before the company paid me the 2 weeks of sick leave. The coronavirus pandemic makes prompt enforcement of paid sick leave all the more important, as even amidst this crisis, we cannot trust our employers to do the right thing. Even when I returned to work, that stress did not go away. Though I used to work 30 to 32 hours a week, Chipotle cut my hours down to 14 to 16 hours a week for no reason. This made it harder and harder to pay bills and ultimately forced me to take a second job. I'm overjoyed that the City Council passed the Just Cause bill, which seeks to protect against exactly this kind of situation, but that law has to be enforced.
With that, this meeting is closed. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner and everyone, and welcome to the fiscal year 2022 preliminary budget hearing for the Committee on Fire and Emergency Management. My name is Joseph Borelli. I'm the chair of the committee, and we're joined by council members Maisel, Deutsch, and Cabrera. Today, we will review the fire department and the New York City Emergency Management's fiscal 2022 budgets to understand how they address the needs of all New Yorkers. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the fire department for their sacrifices over the past year. The frontline responses of EMTs, in particular paramedics and firefighters, have been on full display throughout this pandemic. And because of their direct life-saving actions, our city is a safer, better, and more recoverable place. The FY 2022 preliminary budget has undergone moderate changes, decreasing just $12 million since adoption. The department did not have any new needs, and federal funding supports the majority of the FY 2021 increases, primarily from the State Homeland Security Grant and the Urban Area Security Initiative Grant. The Fire Department's fiscal 2021 through 2025 capital commitment plan totals $607 million and supports 281 distinct projects. The committee has held oversight hearings on various topics over the past year: about the city's emergency preparedness for a second wave of COVID, the failure of the city's 311 and 911 systems during Tropical Storm Isaias, and recently a hearing on and passed legislation regarding film site safety, strengthening the ability of firefighters to respond to emergencies at film sites throughout the city. The diversity of the fire department still lags behind other uniform agencies and the makeup of the city's workforce as a whole. And we would like an update on the relocation of Rescue 1 and EMS Station 7 in the Hudson Yards area. I would also like to discuss the EMS revenue increase, the EMS mental health pilot team programs, the fire safety inspections, uniform promotional exams, and the safety of EMS members, which, as you know, has recently come and become front page news.
Good morning. My name is Dan Nigro, and I am the Commissioner of the New York City Fire Department. While COVID-19 has touched the lives of every New Yorker, our extraordinary emergency medical technicians, paramedics, and firefighters were among the first people in the city to confront the virus. At the peak of the crisis, they labored through the busiest days in the history of EMS, responding to 6,500 medical emergencies a day. Even as we succeeded in the field, the virus took a toll on our members and their families. 14 members of the department passed away due to COVID-related issues. We also know that if a fire does occur, one of the biggest factors in the occupants emerging safely is a working smoke alarm. By partnering with the FDNY Foundation, the American Red Cross, alarm manufacturers, and the Council, since 2015, we've distributed approximately 200,000 alarms and installed more than 110,000 alarms. We also make it a priority to proactively educate members of the public to help them avoid experiencing serious fires.
Why some promotional exams have been delayed, and what the status is with DCAS being able to schedule the next round?
They believe they have a way to conduct it, and we're optimistic that we will be able to hold that exam before this fiscal year ends.
Okay, and do we have an idea of how many companies are short-staffed, both with captains, lieutenants, and firefighters?
Well, currently the short staffing is in the firefighter rank. So we had to delay Proby class. The next Proby class will be approximately 150 in May. And I think we're already about 300 members short in that rank.
You say everyone in the department, though, is in favor of increasing the wages, or would like to see that. Just to be personal, does that include you, and have you expressed this position to the mayor and to OLR?
Sure. I personally believe they are not compensated as they should, but I also realize the process involves more than that.
I want to bring two things to your attention. For 1 year, we had $3 billion in excess unexpected funding, and yet we seem not to be able to find the funding for those who risk their lives day in and day out. We only have, when it comes to captain, only half of 1% of captains are minorities. We have to have a system in place. I just don't see a system in place to making sure that people of color make it to the higher ranks.
The proposed 2022 FDNY budget is to be applauded. However, it does nothing to address the reality of the situation at the emergency medical service. Historically, the pre-hospital care providers have been too subjected to a regimen of benign neglect. Psychiatrists and psychologists show emergency medical technicians and paramedics are at a higher risk of developing post-traumatic stress disorder because of the pandemic. Yet, there is zero funding for any type of mental health initiative targeted to EMTs and paramedics.